So, welcome everyone to our first inaugural Integrated Care Partnership meeting. There have been a number of apologies, primarily because we're at that time of year with the holidays. So, Trudy, do you want to run through the apologies, just so, because there are a couple of high-profile ones, that's all?
Yep. So we have got Kate Shields and Kate Canally, Rachel Rotherow, Simon Gittos-Davis, Councillor Ver, and also Mario Dunn.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. As it's our first one in a second, I think what we will do is we'll do some introductions in a second. Not just because it's the usual form, but I think we ought to get to know each other a little bit. And I'm conscious that some colleagues have never met each other before, so I think it's probably helpful just to explain a little bit about each other as well. So it's taken us quite a while, colleagues, to get here. Legislation's now passed and gone. It feels like a distant moment now. But from my perspective, I certainly, when I'm speaking to colleagues post the True North event, post the starting, we've had a variety of meetings and getting together. But this is the first real opportunity for us as a integrated care partnership to really come together. And there has been some fantastic work, which the way in which we're going to do this, colleagues, is that we're not going to have the papers presented. What we'll do is we'll assume they're all read, and then we'll actually spend more of our time chatting them through, and but by exception, if that's okay. So just those who are down to present, please, if you could just note that, then we'll have more of a discussion than anything else. So in terms of the scene setting part of this, I think it's important to say that Linda, who's the Councillor Linda Taylor, who's the co-chair here as well. Linda and I have talked over a number of months and agreed that we will co-chair this, and the intention is to rotate the chair of this. Linda and I will remain flexible in this process, depending on what's on the agenda. But Linda, if I could invite you, is there anything you would like to say at the kickoff of this?
No, I'm just going to make a very obvious statement that today is going to be how we're going to change the outcomes for the people of Cornwall, and I'm absolutely looking with great excitement to how we're going to accomplish that, and then, for us, make a real difference.
For sure. Thank you, Linda. And I think we ought to recognise we're not starting from base zero. There's some fantastic work done in terms of some of the strategies, the Cornwall Plan, the Health and Wellbeing Board strategies. There's the NHS long-term plan, which we shouldn't forget about. All these things are either in place or in play. And as we go through this set of agenda items, you'll see there are certain things which, as part of the legislation, we are required to do, but we're going to do anyway because it's the right thing to do, and we'll pick up on that as we go through the meeting. So I think the best thing I could probably do now is just maybe ask colleagues, and I'll try and do it in some sort of order, if I may. If I could actually just ask the council's side, because the way we've got about doing this is that there are precisely the same number of representatives from the two councils when you add them together with Linda. To the NHS side, if you include me, so we have a complete equal partnership in this, in terms of who's on this integrated care partnership group. And then we also have, unfortunately, he sent his apologies, Mario representing Health Watch, and I can see Joe, who's actually the chair of the VSF on here. So that's the broad church. So you've now seen Linda. Most of you probably know Linda anyway, but Kate Canally, who's the chief executive from Cornwall Council, she's actually on holiday. Rachel Rotherow, she's on holiday too. But Rachel Wigglesworth, could I just ask you to introduce yourself briefly, please?
Morning, everyone. I'm Rachel Wigglesworth. So I'm the Director of Public Health, and my remit covers both Cornwall Council residents and the residents of the Isles of Scilly Council, so both authorities. And my statutory role is around protecting and improving the health of the population. So my part in both this agenda and in partnership across both councils and the community is very much what I feel my purpose is. So very much committed to this board working and to address the needs of the people in Cornwall. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, somebody who's relatively new, not just to us, but to also the council. Can I invite Al Bullman?
Mittendar, good morning. I'm Ali Bullman. I am the Strategic Director for Care and Wellbeing. I'm the Statutory Director for Adult Social Care in the Council, in Cornwall Council, and I'm also a member of the ICP. Thanks.
Thank you. Meredith?
Hello, I'm Meredith Teasdale. I'm Strategic Director for Children's Schools and Families at Cornwall Council, which is the Statutory Director of Children's Services. I also have responsibility for children's health outcomes for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly, and I'm chair of the One Vision Board, which seeks to focus on that. So for me, partnership working is absolutely imperative in how we ensure that we're delivering improved outcomes for our children and young people, and therefore for our future health and well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. And although I said that Rachel Rotherow is away on holiday, of course, I think, Angela, are you standing in for Rachel? If you are, please introduce yourself.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I'm here on behalf of Rachel Rotherow. I'm Angie Andrews, Head of Commissioning in People Commissioning at Cornwall Council. And I know Rachel will be working really closely with Rachel O'Connor, who's also here. So thank you very much.
Lovely. I'm not sure. Have we got Aisling on the call? Yes, Aisling, please. On the Isles of Scilly.
Yeah, I've got a few glitches today, so I might have my camera off, but I'm very much here. I am, like Meredith, I am Strategic Director for People and Communities, but it also encompasses the role of the DAS. I feel exactly like Meredith does about the benefits of partnership working, and we've seen the evidence of that for some time in children's services. And I support Meredith as the Vice Chair of the One Vision Board. Great to see you all.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Barbara Ellenbrook.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Barbara Ellenbrook. I am Cabinet Member for Children and Families and Learning and Skills. So Meredith and I and Aisling actually all work very closely together and very much have children and young people at the heart of what we do. So I'm very pleased to be here. And I'm afraid if I think things aren't going the way and people are forgetting about children and young people, I will certainly be somebody who'll be sounding off about that, as John well knows.
And we encourage you to do so as well, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Councillor Veer, has he sent his apologies? I can't see him on the...
He has,
Yes,
John.
okay. Andy is the council lead for Cornwall Council on adults. And has Joel from Cornwall Council, from Isles of Scilly Council, sent his apologies, Aisling?
I'm here, John. I'm here.
I can't see you on the screen, my friend. So, Joel, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, all. Joel Williams, elected member for Council of the Isles of Scilly. And within that organisation, I hold the role of lead member for children and lead member for adults and public health.
Thank you. And Linda, are you happy you've introduced yourself, or would you like to say some more?
I think I'm happy for you to move on and find out who else is here now, John. Thank you.
Good, thank you. So interesting, everyone. So that's our council's colleagues who are on here. So I'm just going to leap across to the NHS colleagues for a moment. So if I could, so Kate Shields, of course, has sent her apologies. Simon, who is the CFO of the NHS, is not well either, so he's sent his apologies. But if I could move to Helen.
Thank you. My name's Helen Skinner. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly ICB, and started on the first day of the ICB starting. So very, very excited to be here working in partnership. So I have a number of portfolios, including things such as population health management, work looking to tackle inequity, and also things such as quality, medicines optimization, and so forth. But from my point of view, just very excited to be working in an integrated care system. I've joined here from New Zealand a few weeks ago, which is an integrated health system. So just very excited to be here working in integration and working in partnership with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And I think I'm right in saying you came from the Christchurch system in New Zealand. Is that right?
That's right. I was the Chief Medical Officer for Canterbury District Health Board. Yes.
Very good. Thank you so much. So unfortunately, Susan Bracefield's not with us. She's our chief nurse. She's sent her apologies. But can I move on to Rachel, please? Rachel O'Connor.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. I'm Rachel O'Connor, and I'm the Director for Inclusion with the ICB, and I find that so exciting. I've been a Commissioner for around 20 years now, but actually the title and the role, which is Commissioning for Inclusion, Commissioning for Equity, really excites me, and I think is really bold as we go into the ICS and ICB. I have the joy of the portfolio with our joint commissioning and our joint partnership with our local authorities, and the full commissioning portfolio for Cornwall and the Isle of Scilly. But also with that, part of my agenda is our work to ensure our localism and working with our integrated care areas and our communities, and the devolution and focus on building around our community assets. So great to be here, great to have the first ICP, and very much looking forward to working with everybody on this agenda.
Excellent, thank you so much. Patrick.
Hi everyone, I'm Patrick Weir, Director of Workforce and OD for the Integrated Care Board, formerly and recently of Cornwall Council. So lovely to see recent colleagues in a slightly different context, and really looking forward to working with everyone in partnership. On the agenda today, there's a paper about integrated health and care strategy. I think my job is to make sure that we have an integrated workforce that supports the delivery of that. So that's what I'm here for, and to contribute, and like everyone else, really looking forward to working with everyone on that. Thanks.
Thank you. And Patrick, just before we move on, you're kindly helping us with your other hat on in terms of the Integrated Care Board on OD and bringing us together. I would encourage you to think about quite how as an integrated care partnership, you might think about how we do more than just the formal elements of this and help bring us all together as well.
For sure. Yeah.
So please, that's the executive group from the NHS side. I just want to now introduce two of the system's non-execs that we've got. If I could introduce first of all Neil.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. This is quite an exciting time for me. I've been involved in integrated working for a long time, first as locality lead in Penwith, and then setting up the West Integrated Care Area to bring people together, including the voluntary sector, to work at these ways of working. I was a GP here in Marazion for 30 years. When I retired, I became a trustee of Volunteer Cornwall. I've now resigned because I'm going to be chairing the Integrated Care Area Committee, which will assure, develop and look at the ways we work to bring together all parts of the sector to work, particularly on the issues of health inequalities and building resilience, particularly with the voluntary sector, in order to underpin the way we want to work going forwards. When I was involved in previous integrated working, I was a member of the One Vision board for some time and the Collaborative Communities board. So I go quite a long way back into this type of working.
Thank you. I seem to have inadvertently, Carolyn, please introduce yourself.
I've just done it in the chat, John.
Oh, yeah, no,
morning all.
I would never
I'm Carolyn Andrews, Director of Transformation and Partnerships. And as I've put in the chat, part of my portfolio is to continue to build on our working relationships beyond kind of health and care. So piece of work at the moment with Department of Health and Social Care and the Department of Works unit to look at how we build employment relationships across Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So as I say, that's part of my portfolio, along with a lot of the corporate services within the Integrated Care Board, obviously the strategy and planning and transformation. But our focus at the moment for me is some internal transformation, and the kind of priority work that I had been working on is now sitting with Rachel, so that we can make sure that they keep the pace that they need to do. I really look forward to working with everybody. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Karen, and apologies again. And then if I could just, before I introduce Margaret, or you introduce yourself, Margaret, I think it's important to say, having just also heard from Neil, is Neil representing on the Integrated Care Board place-based and community-based teams and the committee. But it was also felt when Linda and I and colleagues were talking around the composition of this forum, is that we actually have a representative from the providers. So Margaret is actually here from the NHS side anyway, is here less with her CFT hat on and more to actually be the representative of the NHS provider side. So Margaret, over to you, please.
Well, you've just introduced me, John, so thank you very much. I'm Margaret Schwartz. I'm the chair of Cornwall Partnership Foundation Trust, which I'm sure you all know provides the mental health and community services in the county. But I am here to represent the provider side, and I include amongst that some of our volunteer third sector colleagues who are also part of our provider collaboratives and part of providing care in Cornwall.
Okay, thank you. So, as I said earlier, Mario unfortunately has sent his apologies, but another member of the team is Mario from Healthwatch. But also, if I could invite now Joe, who is the chair of VSF, and please explain yourself and your role here, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Joe McAvoy, Chair of Cornwall Voluntary Sector Forum, which is an infrastructure charity in Cornwall which supports voluntary sector organisations. My background is I've worked in health and social care for about 30 years in Cornwall and around the country in various guises and roles. And we're really excited about how, in as integrated way we can, we can use the opportunity to mobilise the voluntary sector, particularly around the integrated care areas and at place, to support the combined aims of the partnership.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for what also your event down at in Redruth. Amazing to meet all your colleagues. It's a shame Kate's not here because she always reminds me. How was it? 5,729 organisations in the third and charitable sector in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So that's amazing to have you here. So thank you for that. There is another face on here, which of course is Trudy. Trudy, just please explain your role here.
So there's Heather on the call as well, John, but she works in the governance team. So I am the board secretary of the ICB, but also the deputy director of corporate governance at the ICB. We'll be providing the admin and support to the meeting, but we're also working really closely with Lynn Davey at the council, who administers the Health and Wellbeing Board, because we recognise the overlap and the interlinks that are needed there. So just to provide assurance that we're working closely with council colleagues as well.
Yes, and thank you to you and to Heather. Okay, I thought that was important that we actually, it's so different when you're doing this on Teams versus in a room, isn't it, really? But I'm sure there'll come a point again pretty soon when we'll all be in a room together. So shall we move on, colleagues? So I think the first thing, just to formalise really for the minutes, is the chair arrangements for the Integrated Care Partnership. So as I said earlier, Linda and I will be co-chairs of this. The idea is to rotate them, to remain flexible. Is there anything else, Linda, before I just get everyone's endorsement to that you would like to add?
Well, no, it's just to reinforce the fact, though, that we're all here to achieve a good outcome. And so I'm absolutely working with hearing everybody say that we're here for partnership working. And I know there will be some challenges over the next few months and the next few years, but if we can all bear in mind partnership working, we're going to get through and have really good meetings and deliver for our residents. So thank you, John.
Pleasure, and completely concur with that. So colleagues, to make this for the agreement and for the minutes, I'm going to ask that we support the idea that Linda and I formally co-chair this. So unless there's any dissenters from that will become the decision and we will move on. Okay, thank you everyone. So let's take that as a decision. So let's move on to item 4. Now you heard Trudy reference the close working in terms of the 3 governance teams that have gone on between the 2 councils and the NHS, most specifically in terms of the terms of reference. So this is a classic example where we're not going to present it. It's rather dry at the best of times. I'm hoping you've all read it, But what I want to try and do is just invite each representative from the three main organisations to contribute on this. So Trudy, why don't I invite you first to make some comments. Then I'm going to ask Al from Cornwall Council, and then Aisling, if you could just, or Joel, whoever would like to make any commentary from the Isles of Scilly, because there has been a different journey for each of us in terms of signing these off or making any changes. On the 14th of July, subject to Cornwall Council and the Isles of Scilly's Council of the Isles of Scilly's contributions or any amendments, the Integrated Care Board on the 14th of July approved the terms of reference subject to any changes, and then our collective sign off today. So Trudy, if you could represent the ICB's position on the 14th of July, and then we'll roll it around, please.
Yeah, so it was a great piece of joint work to kind of kickstart those terms of reference and things. And I can confirm from the ICB's point of view, there were no changes requested. We agreed them, but acknowledged that there might be changes needed by the two councils. So we gave delegated permission to you and Kate as the chief executive to make any minor changes needed, John.
Okay, thank you. Could I invite Al?
Thanks, Chair. Just in line with Trudy's comments, really, I think they're really strong terms of reference that have been approved in the council. There's been no amendments that have come to my attention for the terms of reference, and we certainly discussed them earlier this week as well. And there were no further comments from the council, unless any of my colleagues want to correct me on any of that. Thanks.
No, that's the value of this, isn't it? Just sense checking with lots of nodding. Okay, cool.
And I think, John, if I can say as well, just you know, I think they're strong terms of reference, and there might be ones that we need to amend during the partnership. But I think it's really good that we've set the ambition in the way that we have to deliver, in line with Councillor Linda's comments earlier as well, to deliver for our residents. And I think working together, we can make best use of all of our resources, which are really stretched at the moment. Thank you.
Very good. And if I could invite either Joel or Aisling or both, what is your perspective, please, from the Council of the Isles of Scilly?
Shall I start, Joel? The paper was very well received by the Council of the Isles of Scilly, which I think is all credit to my colleagues, because Scilly can worry that it's been swallowed up into big monstrous beasts. So they are really good, and they do give Scilly a powerful and proportionate voice. Just 2 points of detail, because you know what we're like.
Okay.
At 4.6, it says ICB rather than ICP. And just to clarify that Joel's membership is as lead member for adults, given the significant agenda there. It's a happy coincidence that he's lead member for children, but that might change. So just in case there's changes in portfolio holders, we thought it was safest just to say he's here as the LMA, but obviously will bring all his wisdom around children as well.
Okay. Is everybody happy with that? As there doesn't seem a problem. The only point to note, of course, Aisling, is that, and I know we've spoken about it, it's about having equal partnership memberships, and that's why this has worked out this way. So okay, shall we take that as a decision, everyone? Very good. Okay, let's make those changes. Trudy, happy with that?
Yep, yeah. And I will go back to Leah, and so kind of I would like to really record thanks for Leah as well, who kind of produced the initial draft. So I will go back to her and make sure that we amend them accordingly, and then they will be also popped onto the ICP website.
And I think you can never say thank you enough. So I too want to say thank you to Leah, because having been in former life part of the local authority, it's a tough gig trying to pull together something that works for councils and the NHS, which, let's be honest with each other, operate a little differently at the moment. But there is a hand in the air, bear with me.
Not keeping an eye, John, because that's my little
right.
role. Let me see.
Don't worry, Rachel, go for it.
Oh yeah, can I ask Rachel to come in then, please? Thank you.
Thank you. I just thought, you know, my personal view is, you know, we can write terms and reference, but it's about how we deliver together. And I think the principles are really important. Section 2 in the terms of reference about, you know, how we work together, how we put needs and people's voices at the centre of our considerations. And I think even the agenda today, we need to think about how have we done that. So I you know, bringing us back to, you know, what's the point of partnerships? It's not just to have a meeting. It's not just to show our faces. It's to really be thinking about those voices, the needs of our population. And I know that we're all committed to do that, but I just wanted to have the opportunity to say that at our first meeting. And I'm sure many of us will be holding each other to account to make sure that the agenda and the topics we discuss are relevant to those principles.
Thank you.
And John, I've got Neil Warden with his hand up. So if you want to invite Neil in.
Neil, go for it.
Thank you, John and Linda. I thought the principles were equally very important, and there's 1.226 that I pick up, which is ensure co-production and inclusiveness throughout the ICS is championed. We're about to be developing with our integrated care area forums memoranda of understanding in terms of accountability, and many of these principles I think need to be mirrored in those memoranda of understanding. But can I just make a plea that one of the most powerful things we can do as leadership across an integrated care partnership is to promote an atmosphere of permissiveness and forgiveness for this co-production and inclusivity. I was at an event with the Central Integrated Care Area last week, and I cannot understate to you the importance of the permission that was granted by leaders to people who are working across the patch and on the ground in terms of promoting the co-production and inclusivity that we need. People are often a little bit worried about crossing boundaries, and I think sometimes they need people like ourselves to demonstrate to them the importance of this new way of working.
Thank you.
Thank
Al?
you. And I've got Ali Bowman.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Neil on that, really, because I was at that event last week as well. And I think it's really important that as a partnership, we don't just hold ourselves to account in the way that we've always worked, but we actually challenge the way that we've always worked. And I think that came across, Neil, last week really strongly, didn't it? There will be things that we have always done and we are always doing them, but actually what value do they add to our residents? And I think we need to challenge ourselves and actually be compassionate to our staff and give them that permission to work in a different way if it makes sense, and that we're able to do that. So I just wanted to agree with Neil. Thanks.
Thank you. And John, I'm going to invite Rachel O'Connor in.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. So I agree. I think those principles are fundamental in terms of what we're here to do. And I think one of the beauties of coming together as a partner is also how we learn and reflect together and develop together. So I do wonder, John, whether it's quarterly or every 6 months, but there's something that we reflect back and have a reflection section as an ICP in terms of those principles and our reflection. Are we embracing them? Are we adhering to them? And if not, we can develop the areas where we need to strengthen that further. Would perhaps be something I'd propose to the group as a way forward.
Back to you, John. No more hands up.
No, thank you. I can see Rachel putting her thumb up there. So that's something I said earlier on, Patrick, in terms of maybe getting us as a team working in that mindset, but also Rachel making sure more at a practical level then that we're actually not just talking this fight, we're actually doing it as well and calling it out maybe if we're not doing it. At the moment, these meetings are due to be every 2 months, so there's going to be a huge amount of need to be collaborative partnership working in between these meetings. I think that's really critically important as well. Okay, is there anything else then on item 4 before we move on in terms of reference? Okay, so again, thank you to the team that pulled that together. Fantastic work. So the item 5 in some ways links very strongly to the discussion we've just had about community and people at heart, what we're doing and purpose, and probably is the precursor discussion to what's coming next in the agenda in terms of our priorities, but also the piece of work that Carolyn will lead on in terms of partnership guidance. I hope everyone's had the chance to read that partnership guidance. There's something in there that at its very heart in terms of putting people, our citizens, at the heart of everything we do, and also our communities, and therefore almost leading back to what Rachel was just talking about. There's something then about, and Neil for that matter, there's something about how we have that permissiveness and ability to be able to empower those local communities and individuals too to take more control of their own destiny. So I think there's something as we go through this meeting where we can get to the end of it, and I'm hoping we can spend just a little bit of time at the end saying, well, how did that go, and what are we going to do next? Because I think it's, bearing in mind we're already having meetings every 2 months, is I'd like us to get some expectation as to what we would need to have for our next meeting, and not losing sight of the fact that we're actually required by the Department of Health to actually have an integrated care partnership in draft form ready by Christmas. So there aren't many more meetings between now and then to actually have that ready as well. But I'm sure that'll flush out as we go through. So let's move on to item 5. I just wanted to put 5-10 minutes into the agenda for us to have a bit of a free-ranging introduction to where are we at, ways of working, what are some of the bits that we need to think about over the next couple of months. And some of that might actually revolve around the fact that the legislation was obviously driven to encompass all 42 integrated care boards across the country, and a lot of them are much more complicated than us. But having now in Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly moved to a position where we have, through the great work done by Cornwall Council and the Council for the Isles of Scilly, where we are increasingly having one health and wellbeing board, I think part of the discussion then to actually have is quite how we think about the ways of working of the health and wellbeing board and the integrated care partnership group, which is this group, and how we make sure that really we have a golden thread between everything, and things become joined up to the point where, taking Linda's point earlier on, that they drive outcomes and changes for people, and they're not just rather dry strategy documents. So why don't I just throw that open for people just to do some reflections as to where we're at, issues, questions, concerns they may have, recognizing later on in the agenda we will be picking this up again. So this is your opportunity just to raise any questions or thoughts you've got now.
So, John, if I may, I'd like to come in because I do chair the Health and Wellbeing Board, and Joel, who's here from the Isles of Scilly, is the vice chair. So the joint health and wellbeing, it's a new partnership working now between the two local authorities, and we've got off to a good start. But it is a statutory committee, and you know, our common vision is we've got to tackle the inequalities in health. And so for us here on the health and wellbeing, we've got to make sure that there is that space where we can have that reflection, and we can demonstrate that safety working ship. And so for me, as we're all so honest in working together, we've got to make sure that we complement the strategy and the work plan to absolutely take notice of the fact of the statutory commitment as well of that joint health and wellbeing board. But I'm sure we're going to achieve it because we're here so positively.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, thank you.
Any reflections from colleagues? We can pick it up as we go through, but if anyone had an immediate question or concern they wanted to raise, Meredith?
I don't think it's an immediate question or a concern. I just think that I would want to stress, I absolutely agree with Linda, as also a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board, the importance of that statutory committee and the joint strategy that's already been agreed by partners and how that feeds through. But John, you've absolutely talked about that golden thread through from the Cornwall plan through to the health and wellbeing strategy. I think for me, it is that focus as well on the person and the individual and improved outcomes for them. And I think that's a question we've always got to be asking ourselves, is how are the decisions we're making improving outcomes for that individual? That it's not necessarily a pathway, it's not necessarily a intervention, it is about looking at the totality of the person. And I like to think that in the children's system that we have that very much as our focus and that conversation. And again, we would want to make sure that that was very much part of the integrated care strategy going forward, as I believe it is as part of the health and wellbeing strategy as well. So it's not a question, it's more a thought process.
Delighted to hear that. Thank you.
I've got Barbara Ellenbrook, Councillor Barbara Ellenbrook.
Hello, I'd like to sort of follow up a bit on what Meredith said, and I think one of the very important things, and Kate Evan-Hughes is the person who made me aware of this first, is that we need to be actually, instead of standing on the river side, picking people out of the river, we actually need to be at the head of the river, stopping people falling in the first place. And on that note, I think it really is important that we remember that an awful lot of health issues later on in life could and should be addressed when children are children, and I think it's really important we very much keep focused on that aspect, that children, if we get it right for children, it actually then follows through all the way through people's lives. So I know that certainly delayed transfers of care at hospital and what have you, and all that is really, really critical. And I don't disagree with that at all. But equally, what we should be doing and what this partnership should be doing is working on prevention rather than cure. So for me, children and young people and very young people are the heart.
Thanks, Barbara. David, sorry, John, I've got Joel from the Isles of Scilly.
Go for it, Joel.
Yeah, I was just going to totally reiterate what you were saying, John. I don't want to see duplication between the conversations we're having at Health and Wellbeing Board and here, but I'll also go further as well to say that we've got other strategic groups, like One Vision obviously springs to mind, where again we don't want to have duplication or triplication or whatever the equivalent of 4 would be. But I think the advantage for us is the Health and Wellbeing Board in its current state is new and fresh and hasn't become too ingrained. We're only into the first half an hour or so of this meeting here today, so I think we're in a similar position. So I think we've got the will and the well-being and the goodwill to make sure that we don't have that duplication. But I think we just need to periodically just do a little sense check, don't we? Just pause, reflect, stop, just put things to a side and make sure that we aren't slipping down into those same old silos that perhaps we might do without even realising it. But I think we're certainly mindful of it, and I think being mindful of it is probably as good as we can hope for at the moment.
Okay.
Thank you, Joel. John, Rachel Wigglesworth.
Thank you. And I think I was also, we've been working, I think, across a number of us trying to sort of articulate the scope of the different partnerships. I know there's sort of some common membership of the ICB, the ICP and the Health and Wellbeing Board, almost sort of, 80% of similar membership. So really delineating how we run those, I think is front of the mind of those of us who are supporting the sort of work plan, etc. of the board. I think the other thing is around the further strategic landscape. So, there's a Cornwall Leadership Board, there's a local economic partnership, there's a sort of the other strategic partnerships that impact on the key things that drive health and the determinants of health, such as housing and the economy. And clearly this ICP is not going to be able to tackle all of those things by themselves, but employing links and making sure that we get best value and understand the direction of those other larger sort of agendas as well, I think is not our business, but key to supporting our business. The things that keep me up at night are the cost of living crisis, the homes for people in Cornwall, the fact that harmful drinkers, there's more of them and they're drinking more, things that mental health crises that come out of the cost of living and people's concerns about being able to stay afloat. So those things are going to be key to well-being, but we aren't within the control of this. We need to be linking those bigger agendas and asking for support of the wider strategic leaders as well beyond health and care. So I think it's just finding the right space for the ICP, the Health and Wellbeing Board, within that landscape. So it is complex, but I think we'll get there.
Thank you, Rachel. And John, we've got Rachel O'Connor next.
Thank you. I just wanted to extend out the golden thread point, because the golden thread is absolutely the needs of our people that we're here to serve, and actually that should continue to be our guiding light. And the second point connected to that is the relationship between the ICP and the ICB, which again is the unity of the partnership here in actually enabling through how we commission, how we work to achieve that strategy and vision. So we just need to keep the connection through, I think, to the doing the practical of those threads and principles that actually mean we do something different and we go back and improve the needs of the people that we're here to serve. So I would want the ICP, and I think it's in the spirit that Linda and John are describing, is is actually that reference point, in that actually is it changing something on the ground through the ICP, and that connectivity between the ICP and the ICB and the partnership of the authorities that we have in making a difference.
Thank you, Rachel. And John, I'm now going to bring in Alison Ali. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Linda. I just wanted to confirm my support for the comments that all colleagues have made, and I particularly wanted to reference Councillor Barbara's comments about our young people, and certainly we need to find that balance in the way that we work as a partnership and a system to make sure that we are getting it right for children and young people across Cornwall, because that's how we're going to deliver our 2050 vision and the outcomes for our future generations. So I think there is this is a really exciting opportunity, isn't there, around how we work together to deliver that 2050 vision for the council, but also that tackling those health inequalities across our population. And I just want to comment, and this might be semantics, but there's something for me about the inequity and health inequities as well, because I think there's some people, and I think this came up very much through the selection process that I went through with the council. Some people might have facilities in their area, but they're not accessible for them. And referencing what Rachel said about the cost of living crisis, some of that is compounding some of those inequities at the moment. So I'm really keen to work with all partners to address some of that moving forward. Thanks.
Excellent.
John, if I may just make a political point, if I may. I'm the leader of the administration. We are absolutely conscious and aware every single time that any decision we make will have an impact on some part or all of our population, and we are committed to doing the right thing. So I think being a chair will always keep me focused on what's happening, and we are not blind. And I'm really pleased, I'm sorry Andy's not here today, but it was something he couldn't get out of, but we are here to listen, and we want to learn, and we just want to make a difference, and we want to make the right difference. So I'm going to hand back over to you, John. Thank you.
Yeah, no, lovely, thank you. And this is exactly why I wanted to just leave sort of 10 minutes for us to air some thoughts and ideas. So I'll just put mine in for what it's worth as well. I think there's something about recognizing this is a longer term strategic group, but at that point we have to pause a bit and say, taking Rachel O'Connor's commentary about the day-to-day impact this also has at one level. So there are certain things that I think as we go forward, and this is not a decision moment, this is just a discussive moment, is there are certain things which I know Kate Canale and Kate Shields have spoken about. There are certain things that we can ask ourselves as a group together. What are those things that we're doing on things like the Better Care Fund, the issues on the Section 75 agreements that we've got as well? These are already certain elements that we could actually put as chunky items into here about the ways in which the Integrated Care Partnership works, and how does that feed into the wider sense of our wider strategy, and how does that then feed into the Health and Wellbeing Board and the long-term plan of the NHS, and also the Cornwall plan. So I think there's something about that I wanted to say, and there's also something about how we collectively have one version of the truth. There's lots of data and evidence and information out there. I think it's really important that actually we start to coalesce behind bringing that information together from all our partners, not just from the councils and the NHS, but from all our partners. What are the evidence of drivers of change? And then asking ourselves, what are the ones that we're really going to prioritise? Because the thing is, when it comes down to really, putting some muscle behind making change, are we focusing on the right priorities? That's the discussion we're about to get into. And then do we have the decision pathway to make sure that intent is actually carried through into action? And sometimes that might be the thing that is the gap in our golden thread. And that's why I think holding ourselves to account each time we meet to have we made a difference, are we making a difference, is a really helpful challenge, if that's okay. So I'm hoping that was a helpful sort of intro, bearing in mind this is the first time we've met, just to get some thoughts and ideas from colleagues. So let's move into the more structured part of the meeting, if I may. So between Rachel and Al, can we move on to item 6? Is Rachel or Al leading on it, please? Rachel?
I'm. Oh.
No,
yes,
no.
And Ali and I will do a double act on this item.
I didn't know who was leading. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Should I kick off, Ali? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Rachel.
Wonderful, thank you. So thanks very much, chairs. So I'll just do a few points of intro to pull through for the paper, but then, as John said, really want to get into a discussion and shape this item together. So it's worth just a point of context. So the key role of the ICP is the development and delivery of our long-term multi-year strategy that encompasses both health, care and well-being. And actually its relationship then to the ICB in actually the ICB then responding to actually delivering on that strategy over that multi-year in partnership. One of the things, just reflecting on the earlier conversation, is actually it made me think actually even how we started this piece of work from the development of the True North event being developed in partnership and being the golden thread through from the council plan and the health and wellbeing plan gets off to a great start in the spirit of those principles that we were just discussing. And what we'd like to propose as part of the development of our strategy is that we build on the output of the True North events where we came together, and particularly within that our collective vision, our collective aim and the 6 priorities that we discussed. And I think we had some wonderful energy, commitment, very much in the spirit of how Councillor Taylor was describing what is going to be different, how are we going to be bold this time in actually making a difference for the population that we serve and their outcomes, both in terms of the reducing the inequalities, improving the equity, but actually in terms of their whole self and that person-centred approach to the communities in which they live and how we work to achieve that. Again, one of the main points of the paper talks through wanting us to establish a delivery group that oversees this as a collective MDT across our officers. And our approach would be that we would look to develop this in partnership over the course of the autumn in the spirit of how we intend to work, ensuring that we've got a good engagement and comms plan with this, so it has the person's voice through the work and shaping this in a co-production fashion, with a view that we would have a draft by December and then looking to have a final strategy by April. We do need to just be mindful there are a few moving parts at the moment in terms of long-term plans and politically. So we just need to keep that time frame in mind, because that might be subject to change. But I think in the conversations that Rachel W and Ali and I have had is that actually how we make sure that as we're developing this, it's got the golden thread of those strategies through. It embodies and builds on the foundations of our spirit of working, and we use our enablers in how we intend to jointly work together, our commissioning forces and our voluntary sector voice and communities as a further golden thread through the work that we deliver over the next 3 to 6 months. Ali, is there anything you want to add or unpack further on that intro?
Yeah, no, I think you've covered a lot there, Rachel. I think I was just going to sort of then mention then I guess that we really need to understand the impact on our resources and our staff time to do this. And we do absolutely, as you said, Rachel, we need to make sure that there's that golden thread with our pre-existing strategies. The paper is seeking that permission today from the partnership to create a subgroup to do this work and take that work forward. I think that we do need to consider having a report back at a future ICP meeting, Chair, because I know that at the moment the intention is to have a strategic statement of strategic direction, by December, and the strategy by the end of March. And I know that this strategy is key to be feeding into the actual plan that needs to be published in March as well. So I think we need to make sure that those interdependencies are understood by the partnership and the resource and time set aside to do that. I think that as this work progresses over the next few months, we may want to broaden it from the 6 priorities that have been outlined in the True North event back in June, which unfortunately was before I started work as well. So, and I'm not sure how many of our political members were in attendance at that event. So I think we need to work with this in a more flexible way moving forward now, so that we can develop and shape something that's co-produced and not necessarily tied to those 6 priorities, but absolutely adopting them to take forward. Thanks, Rachel.
Sally. And the kind of 2 points that I think we'd like support from the partnership is the commitment in terms of taking this forward and the work that we need to do and offers a time to support this. You know, this is really going to be what speaks to our partnership and what we're here to do, and very much building on the point Alison made, is actually the outcomes that we're striving to achieve together, that those priorities are there to enable us to be able to achieve those outcomes. So I think the outcome framework alongside this, John, is also crucially important, so that we can hold ourselves to account in just the way Councillor Taylor presented at the start, that we're actually making a difference for the people that we serve. Thank you, John.
And I think, if I can, Chair, I think that voice of our residents and people needs to be loud through this strategy and heard. And it's not just about us holding ourselves to account, it's being held to account by our residents as well, isn't it? And I think that's absolutely key. Yeah, I think that's all my comments. Thank you.
Okay.
John, if I may, I'll come in. I like the fact that we're recognising we need to be flexible, agile and fleet of foot to respond to things that are happening. And one of the things we do within the council is, you know, we have that annual conversation. And so the feedback that we get in from there is going to be really important, that we are able to feed that through. The networks that we have, there will always be forms within that network. So it's having that ability to take the different voices from those networks back in to this conversation here. So flexibility is going to be key when we're listening to our residents, and more importantly, as certain things happen in different parts of Cornwall that might not be replicated across the whole of Cornwall. Thank you. I've got Meredith with her hand up.
I really welcome the piece of work that's taking place, and that joint approach to us drafting the strategy, and the fact that we are going to be listening really hard to what our people are saying, and also using the variety of mechanisms that we've got in place as well to listen geographically. I suppose the other bit I just want to put in is the importance of also speaking to and listening to the different system groups and partnership groups that are already in place, and the priorities that they have. So One Vision Board, which for those of you who don't know, has over the last five years been very much focused on children and young people, and has refined itself further to really focus on children's and young people's health outcomes, has already, in conversation with people and the system, look at priorities areas. So again, you know, emotional health and well-being, resilient families, children with special educational needs and disabilities, and a best start in life are the key priorities. So how does that then fit into the integrated care strategy? It fits into the health and wellbeing strategy, joint strategy. We need to make sure it fits in and helps deliver improved outcomes for our children and young people.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So while I agree that there's a degree of flexibility within the way we work, I would hate for us to kind of deviate too far away from the 6 priorities that came out from the True North event, because there was an awful lot of agreement around these particular areas. And that's clearly why they are there, because these really were the strong messages that came out from the event. And I appreciate the event was, you know, maybe 90 people, but when you look at what's sitting underneath these areas, there's a lot of work that we're already doing that actually feed beautifully already into these kind of these aims, these priorities. So as I say, while I agree that, you know, we would need to kind of use the working group, work through what does it mean, how are we going to pull it all together, what needs to happen, I really would hate for us to kind of lose the essence of what was described on the day from a very varied group of people, where there was a lot of kind of citizen voice in it, giving us these very loud and clear messages.
Neil?
Just one point I wanted to really make was that we were talking about people's voices in communities. I think to really hear those, we need to perhaps be aware of the fact that for some people that voice is difficult in terms of statutory provision, and that the advocacy around the voluntary sector and some of the groups that have emerged, particularly around young people and families, can't be underestimated. At the central event, it was clearly stated by Chaos and the Disability Allowance that we're here and we can tell you what we're hearing is needed. And I think we really need to be very aware of that connection. Joe may want to comment, but it seems very important to me.
And John, I've got Ali.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I don't envisage us deviating away from the 6 priorities, but rather building on them as we do the further engagement with the broader groups and groups of our residents, but also listening to our workforce as well about what makes sense to them. So I think this for me just shows that we probably do need to start the work of the subgroup and start scoping out what this strategy is going to deliver and how we're going to deliver it.
And John, I've got Joe.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, just really to echo what Neil's said, don't disagree with anything anybody else has said. And this does feel like it could be a new and improved chance to really get the voluntary sector on board, use of its combined strategic intelligence, an appreciation and understanding of all of the things that it's already doing. I think acknowledgement that the voluntary sector sees people in states of inequity that we often wouldn't expect necessarily to be people that are accessing support from the voluntary sector, particularly around the food crisis and other areas of need. So there is a huge amount that the voluntary sector has got to offer in this space, and yeah, I guess just echoing that commitment that we want to be a part of that and support that.
Before we bring in Patrick, if I may, I just want to acknowledge the work of the voluntary sector. We saw what happened during COVID, and we saw how everybody could work together. We absolutely need to capitalise on that, for me, going forward, and really strengthen the links with the voluntary sector, because some of our communities would have not been able to cope without that input. So I just want to say thank you. Patrick, John coming in. Patrick Weir.
Thanks. Thanks, Linda. Yeah, just a very brief comment. Just to echo and reinforce, I think Ali made the reference to workforce voice also being part of the strategy development. I think that would be really important, that we're hearing from the people who are doing the delivery alongside partners, alongside residents as well. So yeah, just wanted to emphasise that point as a key contributor to the strategy.
And John, Rachel Connor.
Thank you, Chairs. So I'm also conscious that if this group meets every 2 months, is how we make sure that partners and members here are cited on the work that we're doing. So I'm sure I can speak for colleagues as part of the delivery group, but we would want to make sure that outside of this, you had a regular briefing in terms of the progress that we were making, because this is such a crucial part of our work. And I just wanted to check with the group that would be suitable, and that's a good way to keep you informed as well as being engaged in the work as we go forward.
Yes, please, Rachel. I think there's one of the things that comes out from this, if we're going to, which I hope we do in a second, empower and encourage the strategic delivery group to get together, then in some ways we're in your hands to not only come back in 2 months, but keep us up to date in that journey. And we'll just use the informality of emails and that kind of thing to contribute, because we're all wanting to get to the same end. So before we get into a further discussion around this, colleagues, can I just draw out a couple of questions and observations. Again, assuming you've all read the paper, at the very bottom of this paper is a particular wiring diagram, I guess if I can put it that way, which starts to give some linkages between the way in which the local authorities, the NHS, Health and Wellbeing Board, the ICP strategy, which is what will come out of here effectively, needs to feed in, because it will have an impact on the way in which the operational plans for all entities will start to kick in. So I think there's something that we've just got to be cognizant that we're signing up to that as well. The recommendations also, Rachel and Al, are asking for the strategy delivery group to be comprised of Cornwall Council, the Isles of Scilly, Clinical Advisory Group, and the 3 ICAs. I'm trying to understand, taking Joe's point, why we wouldn't have a representative from the third sector actually as part of that group as well. Because one of the real power things that I thought came out of the True North event, taking Carolyn's point, is that was a broad church of 90+ people that came from all elements of individuals, small organisations, large organisations, across all parts of the system, that came together with those elements. It feels like they should still be in the service delivery group, some of those contributions, such that we don't revert from the True North event of total inclusion and just move to a smaller group that actually just has, should we just say, that the more traditional group in it. But Rachel and Al, I'll be led by you before we move on to Meredith. What are your reflections on that challenge?
No, I agree with you, John. I think that's a fair challenge, and I think Rachel, I think you've put a comment in that you agree as well, so we can absolutely take that forward. But
lovely.
I think if we're developing it on behalf of this group, John, that membership should mirror the representation of this group. I think that's right and proper.
Thank you. And just before I invite Meredith in, can I just also stick with my question then about, it also talked about when it says the clinical advisory group, is that the clinical prioritisation advisory group? Just so I'm really clear. So Helen, is that you, or is that, how's that going to manifest itself in terms of representation?
Yep. So that's we've had discussions in the clinical cabinet that was this week to make sure that this is right the way across, because at the moment I think it would be fair to say that there's a lot of health and interdisciplinary, but we don't necessarily have as much representation around care, and so that's one of the things that we are working through. So
Helen, can I just unpack that slightly further, because the grave danger is that clinical bit just represents the NHS. And what I was exactly trying to unpack there is how does this make sure that it's a clinical voice across the system? Can you just comment again on that to make sure we have a wider perspective?
Yeah, so certainly what has been written before I arrived was talking about clinicians, and certainly from the clinical leadership framework, we've certainly had feedback regionally that there needs to be much more inclusion around care and workers in terms of care workers, because we don't have that representation. So it's very much NHS led, and that's the reason why we need to make those changes. So yes, it's to get that broader representation, because at the moment it's very health focused.
Okay, thank you. Meredith.
I'm really sorry, John, mine's a point of pedantry and I apologise for this, but the Appendix 1, I just wanted to check, that's about the diagram that you referred to. That's really about how the system fits together. It's not exclusive, it doesn't put in there the local authority points around that. The Health and Wellbeing Board is a joint partnership body, the ICP is a joint partnership body, so just I thought that there was a comment that it shows how the local authority fits in, and I don't think the appendix does that. It sets out our partnership working as well as different elements within the NHS, but I apologise, that's a point of pedantry, but I just wanted to make it clear in a public meeting.
Okay, well I think again it might be an area of clarity that we both need to have then across the system, and maybe we could invite the service delivery group to flash that out, because I think this is part of the reason why I wanted to introduce item, wherever we had it, item 5, which is the working relationship, because that's still an area that needs to be worked through.
John, I've got Rachel.
Yeah, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. I've just noted that, whilst I'm not debating whether the True North sort of output is valid, and I certainly felt that was very much signed up to, I've just note that there isn't any reference, explicitly to inequity. I know it's hidden within the language, and so, population health management might be understood by some, but not by most others. And I think that, whilst we're developing the strategy as part of the 4 core purposes of an ICS, tackling inequalities is very much one of those 4, that we would need to be very clear that was part of the strategy, subject to presumably the the guidance that NHS England or the HSE will be developing further. So just wanted to make that point, as you know, while we might understand the conversations that were there, it doesn't quite come across when I reread that. So I'm sure we'll make sure that that is a focus.
Okay, I think what this. Oh, yes, Rachel, go for it.
Rachel, yeah.
Thanks, Rachel. And I think there's something about, we've got the kind of the 6 priorities and how we're describing what they mean is the work of the strategies. And actually, I think, Rachel, that's where those points around inequality, equity, the real outcomes is what we need to wrap around that. That means that we can actually, because I'm really conscious that we have a strategy that we deliver, and it's something that actually we can have an impact on. And I think those are the key tests with this as we go forward, John, to the SDGs, that actually it's going to be something that is going to make a difference, and we can demonstrate, even as we're doing the strategy, where we think that impact will be, and that's our ambition and goal.
Thank you.
No more hands. Oh, we've got Ashley, the Isles of Scilly.
Hello there. I would like to assume that obviously the strategy will reflect all the place-based discussions we've been having and reflect on the kind of some of the diverse needs. And I know we have to have overarching principles, but I think there are kind of different aspects to different locations, and will we make sure we capture those? I'm sure this is a rhetorical question.
I was assuming in the paper, but thank you for teasing it out, that the fact that the 3 ICA managing directors will be part of the delivery group will ensure that place and community is at the heart of this thinking. Is that right, Rachel and Al? Yeah.
Very much so.
Does that answer the question, Aisling, to your satisfaction?
Yes, you know why I'm asking it.
No, and I do. So shall we try and move on to the recommendations that are in the paper then? So we're being asked to note it, which I think we can do that. But are we happy to establish the SDG group as featured in here, and with the changes that Helen talked about in terms of the clinical group, but with the addition of the 3rd sector being part of that? Are people happy with that? Yes, I'm going to take, unless anybody wants to say no. Linda, are you happy with that?
Yeah, so I would go with it, John, because everybody's here wanting to make it happen.
Yeah.
And we're getting positive nods.
Very good. I just wanted to challenge why item C in this. Why would we? Why do you want to test NHS England about a December timeline? Why would you want to do that?
John, it was the point around there's just a bit of moving feet at the moment in terms of the actual expectations for December and March, given the slippage on some key items like the long-term plan, and obviously with a new Secretary of State, we just want to just check that those timelines with NHSE remain when the guidance comes out. Okay.
Because I think, Rachel, originally this was supposed to be developed
December.
and published, wasn't it? December, yeah. So
yeah.
it's that, John. It's the movement of the timeline.
Right. Okay. Just an observation to that group. Of course, the councils, but also the NHS, will be setting their budgets well in advance of the 1st of April. So any implications you want to have that lands in 23-24 that actually has a movement to prioritise or funding. If we miss that deadline, we've probably both and all lost 23-24 as a year to move any funding. But that's an observation for you to reflect.
And I think, John, that was sort of part of my comments earlier around the fact that we need to be quite flexible and agile, and making sure that we realise the interdependencies of this work as it gets developed and shaped, because you're absolutely right. It may or may not have implications for the budget. It may have positive implications for the budget, but also we need to understand how that then feeds into the plan that needs to be published in March as well.
Agree. Thank you ever so much. So everyone's happy with C then? Thank you. And just before we get to the D recommendation, just to give everyone the perspective that the Integrated Care Board did adopt the True North vision, aim, and the 6 priorities. But can I ask for colleagues here to endorse item D then? Yeah? Okay, perfect. So I think we've concluded that item. So thank you for that conversation. Let's move on to the next item, which is working in partnership guidance introduced by Carolyn. Carolyn, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So everybody has had sight of the document. This is statutory guidance for integrated care boards, NHS trusts and foundation trust, and is adopted as a policy for NHS England. And a lot of the things that we've been talking about this morning are actually woven and written through this. It specifically talks in quite a few places about senior leaders having a particular role in making this happen, making sure that they understand what matters to people and how their organisations will meet the legal duties that this document states that we need to follow. It also talks about building a culture of partnership, and it says that leadership's vital to achieving this, so that communities and staff will look at our system leadership as a role model. But the 10 principles within here are clearly the principles that we will all need to work towards. So again, this is a very, I think, a very well laid out document. It's very clear about what's required. It's very clear about the actions that we kind of need to take and about our legal requirements and our legal duties to enact this. So as I say, really for me, this is about everybody acknowledging that this is a statutory guidance piece of work, that we will work towards it, and recognising that I think a lot of the things that we've talked about here about partnership, about hearing our communities, about listening, about acting on listening, about engaging with people and hearing what they're saying to shape our services is all this document, and we need to kind of hold this document, I think, through everything that we are doing. So it is quite a lengthy document, but it is well worth the read if you haven't read it, because I think it will just encapsulate a lot of the conversation that we've already been having this morning. So that was it, really. That was it from me, Chair, because as I say, it is, the document speaks for itself.
Thank you. And if I can just reference people to, I think it's page 8, maybe page 9 in the published document about the 10 principles. I mean, they just endorsing what you said, Karen, this should be at the heart of everything that we're all doing. And if we can keep this document handy and almost use as a litmus test to just sort of, are we really saying that we're doing this hopefully once we sign up to this? Because to me, I've seen lots of documents come out of the centre. This is probably one of the more valuable ones that I've actually seen, one of the more personal and community based ones that I've seen, and one that for me actually talks to what Rachel and I were talking about earlier on in terms of empowerment down to community and people and place level. So what do other colleagues feel about this particular document before we move on to this? Any thoughts?
Getting a thumbs up, but no hands up, John.
Okay, so I think
Rachel Wigglesworth, John.
Rachel?
Thank you. Sorry, I was stuck. I couldn't get my hand up. I mean, I have read the guidance, and I thought it was a really good bringing together of evidence and guidance from, Public Health England, which is now known as the Office for Health Improvement and Disparities, but PHE, good source of really good evidence-based work around working with communities to tackle community health and involve people, and the NHS sort of structures, also understanding some of the local authority democratic processes and membership. So I think it's a really good bringing together, and I particularly recommend people to just read some of the case studies, because I think it just really it brings it to life about what we're really talking about when we're talking about some of this work. And one of them, I particularly noticed, was around co-design work with people with mental health problems. Now, we've got that going on in Cornwall at the moment with Health Watch and some bespoke commissioned work engaging with people who suffer from poor mental health to look around what are the preventative and supportive mechanisms that can keep them well. So we've got some good examples. Maybe we should make our own compendium of work that's gone well in Cornwall to share as well. So I really recommend just having a look at those case studies so you can really understand the types of things that we do and can do better.
Thank you, John. I've got Neil with his hand up.
Thank you. yeah, I agree, Rachel, that there are good examples of things that have worked well in Cornwall, and in reading the document, one could mirror things I'm very aware of. But just to say, to be certain, we've really firmly endorsed this document to the integrated care area forums as a way that they need to adopt ways of working, particularly in terms of engagement with communities, and the ways that may happen.
Thank you, John. Caroline Andrews.
Yes, thank you. So just there is something else I'd like to draw people's attention to is actually page 80, because it kind of links to the item before, because it talks about strategies and reports, and it kind of really clearly states, you know, who prepares what, who's got to be involved, and you know what it's there to do. So as I say, I do think in lots of different ways this is quite a comprehensive document, and as I say, I do personally feel it'll certainly become probably my Bible and be carried quite dog-earedly around in my laptop bag, I can see.
Thank you, John. I've got Ali coming in.
Sorry, Ali, just before you just come in, Caroline, you raise a really important point again about that page 80, because that page 80 is at the heart of the way in which, particularly this group and its relationship, the Integrated Care Board and Health and Wellbeing Board, I think this is actually going to be a key determinant in the way in which the approach is going to go. So for those of you who have read it, please comment. For those who haven't, have a quick look. So Al, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to just reinforce what Rachel and John said. I mean, having been in the system only a short period, I think it's 4 weeks today, I can really see that there's some really good work going on across council at place. And certainly the event that Neil and I referenced that we were at last week, I think it was on Thursday last week, there were some really good examples of working with people on what matters to them and at community level as well. So I think that's a really good starting block for us if we did want to, you know, share some of those good news stories, I guess, so that we can learn from them and spread that good practice.
Very good.
Back to you, John.
Caroline, is that a legacy hand? It's a legacy one, fine. So are there any other comments on, I mean, what a great paper from the centre in some ways, because to see them actually put, it starts with people. We've now got to follow that through. So hurrah. Okay, so shall we move on to the recommendations? So to receive the statutory guidance, which we've duly done, and confirm our commitment to adopting the 10 principles and to persist them, to use those 10 principles and the approaches used in that document as a mechanism to assist our development of the integrated care strategy. I take it everyone is happy with using this as the bedrock of what we're doing. Yeah, okay, fab, thank you very much. That's an important item. So let's move on to the next item, which is the emerging work plan. Well, it's meeting 1, everyone. So we don't actually have a forward plan yet, but it'll be the norm within the councils, and as we're starting to develop within the NHS, a forward plan. Can I just ask for people to give any thoughts about, and maybe we come back to this, the service delivery group colleagues who we've just commented and supported, how might we think about getting a forward plan that we can see, not just for our next meeting, but over the next 6-12 months, in terms of what our thinking and approach and priorities would be to focusing on what? Has anyone got any thoughts about how we focus on an emerging work plan? No thoughts at the moment. Well, maybe we could actually ask the, so we'll go Aisling first.
Sorry, my computer's so sticky. Sorry. Yeah, I think it's the heat. So this is not as much about the work plan, but as a starting point, it'd be good to have like standing items, which is an update from what was discussed at the ICB, and then some reports from the 3 managing directors of the ICAs, because then we're just having all those joined up conversations. And I think mutually they'd like to know what we talked about, you know, at the ICP. So that at least within the system, there's like aligned thinking and conversations.
And
okay, so
sorry, John.
Yes, can I just comment?
Yeah.
Just Meredith, just before you come in. So if I could ask the service delivery group to think about how generally whether it be from the Integrated Care Board or from the councils or from the third sector? How do we get informed updates that are going to be brought to here as well? I think that, Aisling, if we just broaden that with your support.
Meredith, John?
Okay, so you won't be surprised to hear that I think it's really important that we make sure that we're focusing on children and young people and their improved health outcomes, and that's got to be part of the emerging work plan. And indeed, One Vision board is already focusing on their work plan. And I suppose that then hopefully answers some of the question, John. So I think that group that's looking at the strategy needs to be linking in with those different groups that are already delivering work, and therefore understanding what's the immediate work plan and then what is the longer term work plan as well. And I don't think we need, you know, it's not a blank sheet of paper. I think we're fairly clear on what it is we need to do. It's about having that focus and that attention to detail and that sign up from the partnership. So I think that should be doable within that group that's already been agreed to deliver the integrated care strategy.
Thank you.
And then we've got Rachel, John.
Thank you, Chair. So we'll obviously have the timeline for the development of the strategy itself to populate on the work plan. I'm really happy that we take back as officers to the SDG those further items. And just building on Meredith's point, I think there is just a piece around just mapping where we've got integrated partnerships happening. So children's is one example, and actually how that is feeding through into the strategy work, but also then how that then feeds up in terms of that broader update, John, that you and Linda were describing. And I think we probably a question that we reflect back at this group is the balance between the shaping of the partnership as well as the oversight of the work we're doing in partnership is probably something for us to keep considering in that spirit of the OD work that we were describing.
Okay.
And I've got Ali with a hand up, John.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I think, you know, I think there's a real opportunity to develop quite an exciting forward work plan for the ICP. But I just wanted you, Chair, just to run past. So last week we had a learning disability peer review for learning disability and autism, which was a whole system peer review. And I think hearing people's voices at ICP is really important on our forward plan. So I was wondering if, you know, the report, the findings and the action plan from the system would be something that you think is appropriate to bring to a future ICP. I think it is, but you know, I'm new to the system and I'm just testing this out really.
John?
Well, sorry, can you just cut? I didn't really understand the question, Helen. Can you just, what is the question?
Oh, okay, sorry. So last week, we had a peer review for learning disability services and services for people who have autism. Within the feedback for that, we hear really loudly the residents' voice.
Yes.
And so we will be doing some work as a system over the next couple of weeks around what our response is to that, to those findings and that report. And I think that if ICP want to hear people's voices and be really clear about how we're taking things forward, maybe it would be worth putting on a future agenda. But I wasn't sure, John, if that was appropriate for ICP or not. So I just wanted to test that out with you and the group.
That's what I was hoping that would be a group answer. I think one of the things that we might want to do is the group that we've just empowered, and as part of the terms of reference, where Kate Shields is picking up sort of the part of the executive lead on our collective behalf, is quite then how we make sure that forward plan is what we all want to see on it, and it's got time in the agenda. So Al, I'm really up for whatever you feel is appropriate. If everyone else feels it, let's do that.
Brilliant, thank
John,
you.
Yeah, John, you've got Margaret with a hand up.
Sorry, muted. I wonder if this group isn't supposed to be looking more at strategy. So I'd be keen to see what the learning disabilities and autism people say, but I think not so much as a backward look, but as how then can we take that voice and feed it into our plans. And I think the danger of getting it, I think we need to digest that first before we see it, which is, please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I think it's going to be very valuable in making our plans, but I would rather us be feeding that into our future strategy rather than saying, well, this is what they said last week. And so what did they said last week? What does that mean, therefore, that we need to change? And could that be more of our focus? Because
I know that there's, sorry.
Ali?
I was just going to say, I know that there's quite a lot of work going on at the moment. There's a new strategy that's been developed in the council, and I know that there's some work going on in the NHS developing a strategy at this moment, I believe. So I think for me, there was just something about, do you really want to test out how that strategy's landing with residents? I mean, it's going to go through other governance routes anyway. So, but I just wondered if the ICP was interested in hearing that voice back from our residents around that strategy and making sure that that's embedded into the strategy going forward.
I think that we do, but I think we need to make sure that that strategy is well developed, because we're going to be tripping over ourselves if every time somebody somewhere, the council or the NHS or the council and the NHS is working on a specific piece of business. I think we need to let them develop it and then feed it into here for saying, yeah, well, that fits, or no, that doesn't fit, go away and think again, kind of.
So I think there's a really constructive challenge from Margaret there about ensuring that we have strategies here.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we'll end up, if we're not careful, becoming business as usual meetings. And this really is trying to lay down some longer term stuff. I think, Margaret, if it's all right with you, I'll reference back something I asked in terms of evidence and data to inform our strategies going forward, not to look backwards, because Margaret and I are on the same page in terms of using that to look forward, though. You have that evidence such that we all have one common view of it. I can think, which I won't go into now, I can think of a few examples where we all have an opinion. There's lots of anecdote. It would be nice for us to collectively get to a set of evidence that we can all say, that is the evidence. This is therefore the strategy. Therefore, this is what we're going to do. I think if we took that approach with everyone's support, then we're more likely to land strategies into the do. Does that work for you, Margaret, as an approach?
It does indeed, John, and that's exactly where I'm coming from, is let's gather the intelligence. And let's have it all in front of us rather than piecemeal. Thank
you. So just before we move on to Rachel, Al, I'd be interested in your feedback on this bit, because I'm going to jump now to Nigel, who left us earlier, but in the chat box left his comment, because I think now might be the time to raise it. Nigel wrote, I'd be keen to learn more about how the diverse, and he really emphasised the word diverse, voices of residents will be heard. So I guess the question I wanted to pose, not to be answered now, colleagues, and maybe the service delivery group might come back with this, but how do we make sure that we end up doing this collectively aimed at individuals, but we do it once from a system perspective, such that you can almost imagine that each of the individual teams will be doing their own bits. And sometimes when you add them up, they don't make the whole. Have we got a fresh approach? And it's a question more than anything else. They might actually look at it from the person. Think about the agenda item we just had, from the person first, the community first, and then ask ourselves the question, how is that informing our strategies looking forward? Because sometimes that data and evidence that I just talked about, actually looking backwards, might be used to take us in a road based on yesterday, when people are collectively screening out for things differently going forward. So I'm not asking you to comment now, but if I could ask you to think about how are we going to get that unified set of feedback, contribution and ongoing engagement of people and communities in our strategies in order to look forward. Okay, Rachel.
Thank you. I just, in your comment about understanding some of the needs and being based on sort of, driven by that as a partnership, I wanted to refer back to the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment, the statutory sort of requirement to have that. And we have one in Cornwall, hosted on Cornwall Council's website, and a population needs summary was written in 2021 that informed the health and wellbeing strategy. So, it's not everything, and there's also a collection of other thematic papers that have been done over, I think, the last 8 years in that Joint Strategic Needs Assessment that have been based on engagement with particular population groups, whether that be veterans, whether that be people with learning disability. So there are some insights, whether they're current, it might be a question, but there is a population summary of data So if it's a sort of factual account of population assessments, that's something certainly that is available already. People have reviewed at various points, but might be that we can refresh some presentation to the partnership if people felt that would be helpful. I think that we also talked to Healthwatch about integration of their insight into a single sort of repository, so that we're not we bring a one Cornwall approach to our needs assessments, which we're working on, and we certainly hope to progress that in the next in this calendar year.
Thank you.
John, I think if I may, Margaret says she's just had to leave, but one of the points she raises in her chat is about hearing all the voices, especially those who may not be easy to hear. And
Yep.
This is a discussion we have within Cornwall Council, making sure that there are people who will have their voices heard, but there is a small minority who struggle, and it's somehow finding how we can absolutely listen to all voices.
I 100% agree, Linda, and I think where I just wanted to take it is how do we do that, particularly with the areas of health inequalities that we need to focus on? How do we empirically evidence it as well? Because I tell you where I want us to just look over the horizon for a moment. If we're going to look at things and they may end up taking us in a different direction, it's probably going to have an impact either on current budget holders or strategies or the way we do things. Because if not, it's what we do now. And it's going to be difficult, colleagues. Let's just be honest with each other. It's going to be difficult to shift to a position easily without that kind of evidence. And that's part of the reason why I think also we've got to think about how we get those two major strands equally focused on clinical and practitioner engagement and their advice and guidance in terms of priorities, but also we're going to get people and communities advice and guidance in what we're doing. And I'd just like to think about how my challenge to everyone is going to be, how are we going to evidence that back in the room? Because we can't let very loud voices trumpet those more quieter ones. We've got to get a representation that is representative, not just the ones who shout most. Neil.
John, I think there are two strands to this. One is helping people understand that when we might be looking at services changing or provision changing, even in local areas, that they have a responsibility to ensure a diverse set of voices is in the room, and that when that works and that has been achieved, we capture that good approach, even if the outcomes aren't the ones that are possible. The way we've done it and who we've engaged needs to be captured so that people can learn from that process. We've recently looking at just a small example like outpatient provision at West Cornwall Hospital, and with a steer we're now bringing in wider voices through organisations like Trelia that bring in children and young families into the debate, because too often it is the debate of those who advocate for our older populations.
Yeah.
So we need to just ensure people get that at the outset rather than as an add-on.
And to be fair to both Barbara and to Meredith, how do we make sure that it's not just the loud adult voices that are heard, and how we actually ensure that all ages and all groups are captured in that? Because there's going to come a point when we're going to have to, with our new priorities, we're going to have to do things differently, shift resources differently, and that will have implications on the way things are done. Meredith.
So we have really good processes of listening to children and young people, and Councillor Taylor referred to it earlier about the annual conversation. I think it's whether we're willing to listen and how we include that in our decision making. That's the challenge for us. I think the voice it can be heard very loud and clearly, but it's ours to hear it.
Okay, thank you, Rachel.
And I think keeping the theme of the golden thread, we had some great discussions about this in True North, and the whole person-centred and approaches and unpacking around population health, that actually it was a lot of energy and commitment to that. So part of, I think, the work that we do is as much about how we do that as we go, as much about the product of the strategy itself, John and Councillor Taylor, if that makes sense. So, we've got to embody this as we go in the things that we've committed to in True North that will be demonstrated in the strategy and the work that the partnership will do together.
And John, if I may, in the chat box,
Yep.
there's a couple of observations about we need to make it easy. We need to make it so that people can understand what we're trying to achieve. And the one thing I would throw in for the mix is that we do live in quite a multicultural community here in Cornwall, and we do have large populations of Polish, and we've got Ukraine, and I would like us to consider producing that strategy for languages of that population who could be disadvantaged because they don't understand what we have on offer. And I know there will be costs, but I think we do need to be thinking about targeting those larger populations we now have within the communities of Cornwall.
Completely agree. And in fact, Linda, just building on that, at our Integrated Care Board on the 14th of July, Debbie, who is the partner member representative for mental health, raised the question about using Easy Read, which personally I've not heard of, but is a mechanism for making sure that our strategy documents pass the test that everyone can understand them. And once you've passed that test, maybe we need to move into language use of that as well. But some of our documentation that goes out could be pretty dry, and you need to be pretty well clued up to get some of it. Whereas the challenge we got back of converting it into Easy Read approach felt like the right one to do. So I think we could we do both, I guess is my question.
Why not? We're setting our own boundaries.
Yeah, why not? Everybody else up for that? Demystifying. There's the trick. Okay. So
I think that would really help me, John.
Yeah, I think it'd help all of us, including me. Okay. I think that's been helpful. So shall we pause on, because that was actually a debate around work plan, actually. So shall we move on from that? And we'll ask the through Kate and the service delivery group and colleagues to come back with a forward work plan, if that's all right, at our next one. So Trudy, can I just ask, when is the next meeting of this?
So we have finally kind of got 3 dates in the diaries, John, and diary calendar invites will go out today. So we've got the 15th of September, the 17th of November and the 19th of January. So that's still bi-monthly. There's then a question mark around the 16th of March, and how do we dovetail with the informal health and wellbeing board, or do we need to set another date? So we've definitely got 3. We might potentially have some more work to do around a date for March.
Lovely. And well, thank you. We'll flash that out, I'm sure. Are we clear also in terms of attendees who's formally deputies for these colleagues? Trudy?
We haven't, but we can kind of go around that.
If
go around that loop, John.
If we're talking around consistency of contribution, I think it's either the member or the deputy is probably better than just another contribution. So is there any other business colleagues people would like to touch on?
Rachel.
Thank you. I think it was really a reflection on some of the dates that Judy's mentioned of the ICP, and I think in September there's an ICB, an ICP and a Health and Wellbeing Board informal scheduled. So we haven't really quite achieved our aim of reducing meetings or duplication. So I certainly will work with Trudy and colleagues to try and make best use of the informal session of Health and Wellbeing Board, and it may be that we want to use that as part of a focused piece of work on developing the strategy with those partners as a sort of helpful integration of Health and Wellbeing Board members and ICP. So I'll certainly sort of take an action to work around best use of time in that September meeting. It doesn't make any sense to me to have 3 meetings with a duplication of membership. I think we really need to move away from that, even though we are defining our work separately. That's a huge amount of time and resources from all of our partners to attend, and so I'll certainly be helping smooth that out. But I think the principle in future around trying to integrate the timing of some of these meetings, I certainly feel would be best value personally. I'm on all of those three of those, so I want to hope that we'll move further towards integration in the next year at least.
Yeah, I think, Rachel, when I came to my first health and wellbeing board, I did a bit of mental arithmetic, and I might be completely wrong, but it looked like the Venn diagram of overlap as to who attends the integrated care partnership and who attends the informal health and wellbeing board looks like a huge overlap. And that's why I still think there's a piece of work to be done for what's happening for the relationship between the Health and Wellbeing Board, informal, recognising it has to have a statutory group, how that informal group and the Integrated Care Partnership group work together. But I'm going back around the loop, which is where we started the meeting. But that's how I think we can also look to be simpler, more joined up, and have less meetings. Okay, any other business anyone would like to raise?
Well, John, if I may say something,
yep.
I think this has been a really good meeting, and I think it's been a really good meeting because I sense that everybody's here because they've got this shared ambition, and everybody's been very polite and everybody's been accommodating, and there's been harmony. And all I'm asking, as we go forward, please remember our commitment in this first meeting and absolutely carry it through on every meeting that we attend. Harmony, accommodation, and wanting to listen and hear other people's points of view. And based on this, John, we can't go wrong, can we, for our residents?
Well, it's a great, I completely concur. And to be fair, this is the first time we've all met formally like this, but this feels like it's been, working collectively for a little while now. But we've got some new colleagues who have just started on the 1st of July. Al's one of them, as an example. I think quickly followed by Helen and some other colleagues. So I think we've got lots of new people in the room as well. And what great place to start with, a mix of colleagues who've got some traditional thoughts and some new challenges. So yeah, it's feeling in a great place, So just before we finish then, unless there's no other business, I just need to come back to Nigel's question. Can I just think about how we might answer his question about how are we going to have that voice? Because I think we've touched on it. Is there a mechanism, because we're not meeting now for a couple of months, can I ask maybe Al and Rachel, who prepared the paper for the service delivery group, do you have any thoughts about how we go back to Nigel trying to answer that question within the 2-month time frame? When will your first service delivery group meet, I guess is what I'm trying to get at, so you can start to get some answers to these questions.
Rachel, I don't think we've got any time in the diary yet, have we?
No, I've just popped a note, and I think given the work we've got to do, we need to at least have a launch session. I think in August if we can. And I think you pose a challenge, John, around that engagement and ensuring that we've got the voice of our residents through the work for the SDG to work that through. So if we've got a meeting in September, I think we should be bringing back an outline of the development of the process for the development of the strategy, and within that are recommendations about how that engagement and comms piece runs alongside.
I completely agree. We need at pace an engagement and stakeholder strategy, don't we? So that we're really clear about hearing the voice of our residents before we put anything on paper that's a final document. So I think that's absolutely key. Thanks, John.
That's a lovely way to finish this meeting. So I'm going to pause it there. Oh, Joe, you want to have a quick...
Sorry, like Columbo coming back in just as he leaves the door. I guess whilst not exclusively, again, voluntary sector is engaged with young to old across Cornwall in small groups, in large organisations, etc., etc. So I think part of the response to how we engage with a wider set of voices or a diverse set of voices is, as much as is appropriate, to use the voluntary sector to do that. And as I say, I'm not saying that's we capture absolutely everybody's voice, but certainly large parts of our communities.
I just want to agree with Jo on that, because certainly from my experience where I've been involved in work where we've designed integrated model of care in other organisations and other systems, absolutely the support of the voluntary organisations have been absolutely key in hearing the residents' voice and helping and supporting to facilitate some of those engagement sessions as well. So I completely agree with you, Jo, and I think that will be writ large in any engagement stakeholder strategy that we develop.
Very good. Okay. So let's just pause. Just taking Linda's lead on thinking like I do that this meeting's gone rather well. I always like to leave a few minutes at the end just for reflections. How did that work for everyone else? Did that feel comfortable, positive, challenging? It's only meeting one.
Yeah, thank you. Like Councillor Linda said, I think it's been a really good meeting. You can feel the shared ambition in the room, the virtual room maybe, but you know that shared ambition and energy and drive is there. And when we started the meeting, I thought, oh, it might just be like, you know, that first meeting, it'll take a little while to settle in. But actually, as we went into the meeting, I felt like we settled into the rhythm of the meeting quite well. And it feels like it's as you said, John, it feels like it's an established partnership already, because we've had lots of discussions and meetings outside of this meeting. So I think that's really positive from my perspective. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Carolyn.
I was just going to share a similar reflection to Ali, actually, the fact that I think a lot of us have already worked together and we already understand our enthusiasm and our ambition. And so actually, in my words, nobody else is kind of formalising that ambition and driving it through here. Gives me quite a bit of hope.
Very good. Well, thank you, everyone. And thank you to Linda, who's been helping me. And I hope I can do half as good a job as you've done supporting me this time, Linda, next time round when you go. So thank you so much, everyone. Let's leave it there. Excellent start. See you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, John.